Howdy, it's Jim Morado, and this is early October 2023. We're in Chillicothe, Ohio, and we are inside of the history store. And indulge me if you don't mind, this is going to be about a 20-minute video, just looking at figures that they have on display and for sale at the history store. And I've mentioned in other videos, I paint figures myself, and I love this kind of thing. Most of these figures are in a scale, if you're in the US, I would say they're mostly probably right around 2.5 inches tall, and that's very, very roughly. I would say they're around 1/30th scale. There's different makers that we're gonna see. But just to give you an idea, I would say most of these are about 2.5 inches. They're made to be collectible, and there are people that collect really nicely done and nicely painted toy soldiers. I would say if you were interested in starting a toy soldier collection like this, on the cheap end, you'd be able to get some soldiers for maybe $40 each. And they go up from there, and that's very, very, very approximate. Most soldiers are going to be a little or a bit more higher than that, but it's just something to think about if you get into it. Like I said, I like to paint soldiers, and I have been doing that really most of my life, and I like looking at these soldiers. Just to get some ideas. These are painted so well. They're painted professionally, and they look great. Some of them are very lifelike, and the detail just kind of blows my mind. And sometimes I like to look at these professionally painted figures just to get ideas about how to paint some of mine. And I like to paint Civil War. I do a whole lot of Civil War soldiers. That's probably my main area. Followed by probably the Alamo and Pioneer soldiers, just little pioneer men. And I think most of us, if you paint toy soldiers, there's a good chance you started out painting World War II. And I know even when I was younger, you could go to Walmart, and Walmart, Kmart, they used to have really nice. They had a whole model aisle of 24th, 25th scale cars, trucks, things like that, and you could usually find a nice set of U.S. and German soldiers to put together and paint. And I think a lot of us, when we're young, we start out finding those kits and putting those together and monkeying around with them and getting hooked on this hobby. I've never gotten into tanks or jeeps or any of that. I've always just painted soldiers. Yeah, and I've done the gaming scale ones too. But this scale right here, most people do between 135th, 132nd, and 1/30th scale are kind of common. And they're not that far apart. And they're far apart enough, though, that if you do a diorama, it's gonna look awkward if you're using that different of a scale. But they're similar scales, I guess you would say. Anyway, but yeah, I love these guys. Love looking at the cowboys, the animals. They do such a perfect job on getting all the details right. I filmed most of the displays here at the history store. Some of them are kind of low or high, and I didn't quite film them perfectly. But this is most of what you'll see if you go to the history store in Chillicothe, Ohio. If you were ever in San Antonio and you stop by the Minger Hotel, they used to have a toy store or a toy soldier store like this, and they had a really nice display of the Battle of the Alamo. And that store moved out 2 or 3 years ago, I'm pretty sure on my YouTube channel I've got a little video of that. If I don't, I'm gonna look through my collection of videos and make sure I put one up, because I know I filmed there quite a bit. That store was really cool though, and it was a lot of fun looking at such a wonderful display of the Alamo. There is an art museum in San Antonio that has a similar diorama setup, and I'm sure I've got that on this YouTube channel. Check it out. It was at an art museum, and they just had a really nice display of the Battle of the Alamo. And as I mentioned, this is kind of a nice high end place, but they seemed very nice about just people coming in and looking around. Of course, if you go into a place like the history store and you look around and spend time admiring their displays, you should buy a book or something. Just throwing that out there. Businesses appreciate that. They also have some nice military prints if you're into that sort of thing. And I mentioned that I like to paint figures. I don't like to buy figures painted by someone else. They do have some unpainted figures. If you go to the history store, they have a little section of some of the old IR miniatures and some other nice metal figures that are about this scale. So I did buy several soldiers while I was there, and they had some good deals. Check that out. How neat. How neat is that? Yeah, some of these soldiers are so colorful and so well done. I grew up in western Kentucky, and I want to say in the late 80s when I really got into figure painting. There used to be a model shop in southern Indiana, Evansville, Indiana, specifically, Willie's Model Shop. And I have bumped into people or met people that grew up in that area. Everybody remembers Willie's. It was legendary. Willie looked like Santa Claus. He was a little old guy. He looked exactly like Santa Claus. He was a former sailor. So he looked like Santa Claus, and he drank and he cussed like a sailor. And he didn't care who was in his shop. He was going to say what he had to say. He was quite the character. And I remember going into his shop several times, and I would say something like, "Hey, Willie, I need to pay. I need to get out of here." And he would just say, just leave whatever you owe me, just leave it on the counter. Yeah, I mean, he was a lot of fun. I also remember a time that he had purchased a collection of used soldiers, just little metal German soldiers, and he had this huge box of partially painted German soldiers. And it was the kind of thing that somebody like me, you look at that and you go, "Hey, these are really cool." And I said, "Hey, Willie, how much will you sell me some of these soldiers for?" He goes, "I just got that. If you stuff some in your pocket while I'm not looking, it's not going to bother me." He literally told me to stuff some of his merchandise in my pockets and to not let him see it. So he was again just quite a character, and he was loved by everybody that was a modeler in that area. He passed away, man, I want to say in the early 90s. And of course his family had a big 50% off sale, and that was the end of Willie's. He had, I remember behind his register, behind his counter, he just had what to me seemed like hundreds of metal soldiers. And just really, really impressive stuff. But yeah, if you were into painting figures or military modeling back in the late 80s, early 90s, in that area, Willie's was quite the place. Vietnam era stuff. We've seen some World War II. I think there's some little bighorn stuff we're going to see here shortly. Just love these. I love the use of color. Someone that paints there's almost a thought that when you're painting a soldier, it should be drab and almost flat and lifelike. But as you can see, yeah, look at these guys. Look at how great they look. The color is used to pop. It really gives them. They look spectacular. If you painted these figures and you painted them perfectly lifelike and used a lot of flat paint, in very earthy colors, they just would not look as spectacular, in my opinion. And speaking of history, Chillicothe, I believe the first and third capital of Ohio, very, very historic town. Camp Sherman, World War II military camp, is here. Of course, you've got the Hopewell Mounds, managed by the National Park Service. Oh man, here's some more just colorful, wonderful looking soldiers. I get so distracted when I'm looking at these. Yeah, Chillicothe is just oozing with history. And they also, the thing that brought us here in the first place is the Sugarloaf Mountain Amphitheater. They do a yearly production of Tecumseh. And again, I've put other videos of that up on this YouTube channel. Just we did a backstage tour a couple months earlier, and we really, really like what they're doing there. In fact, we came up here in October to go see their production of Frankenstein. And again, if I haven't done that already, I'll put up another video just about our experience there. And again, I'll put up more videos, but Chillicothe has an abundance of nice coffee shops. Yeah, here we go. Here's some Alamo, little Alamo setup there. Nice Alamo, the church facade back there, and of course you'll recognize Bowie and Crockett and some of those guys. I believe we saw Santa Ana also. Boo. Yeah, I can look at this stuff all day long. I know a lot of my friends who were in the military enjoy looking at toy soldiers too. It's just such a treat. Yeah, I'm sorry, but Chillicothe, just a wonderful town. I was talking to a friend of mine he grew up in the Dayton and Cincinnati area, and he mentioned that Chillicothe at one time did not have a great reputation. I talked to someone else too who said at one time you just didn't want to be out. Like it was not the nicest city, but it has come a long way, and apparently they've made some improvements over the last decade or so, and I believe, in my opinion, this is just one spectacular city, and I like it a lot. And like I mentioned, we were here just a few months ago, and we had such a good time that we decided to come back again as soon as we could, and here we are. So this is visited Chillicothe for the first time just a few months earlier, and I'm sure we're going to be back often. I did mention earlier, I said that a low-end figure would probably be around $40 if you wanted to get into collecting soldiers like this. Let me back up on that a little bit. I think they have some, not quite as detailed figures, but they have some nice painted ones that you can get. They've got a box of them up towards the counter that were like maybe $5 each. And, most kids probably got started. If you're into toy soldiers, you know Marks, and you probably got into collecting toy soldiers when you'd buy your little bags of Marks toy soldiers when you were younger. And Marks was a little before my time, but I do appreciate them. I bought a lot of recast Marks soldiers, and I've painted those. But yeah, everybody loves Marks. And man, they have just every era and every military represented. I'm just blown away by how much they've done here. All right, do you, if you collect soldiers, if you paint soldiers, if you collect soldiers, I'd love to hear from you. Do you, if you paint your own soldiers, do you ever buy soldiers like this just because? And if you collect soldiers, if you come to a place like this and you actually buy some of these nice high-end soldiers, do you paint any on your own? Just curious. I don't like to have any soldiers in my collection that I did not paint myself. However, when I was in San Antonio, I did pick up a Teddy Roosevelt Rough Rider, which just seemed appropriate. It was kind of a cool souvenir I wanted to have, so I picked one of those up. Love those Mounties back there. Check them out. Of course, we're seeing Jackson and some other characters. Just some of these little townspeople are a lot of fun, too. I mentioned the Marx Company earlier, and how detailed and how wonderful their soldiers were. I know when I was a kid coming up in the 80s, 90s, especially now, if you buy a bag of toy soldiers, they don't look as good. There's Tecumseh, and man, does he look spectacular. That would be a cool souvenir to pick up while you're in town, since Tecumseh is such a big deal in this area. And I love the Civil War ones that they have here. It's, again, I'm a Civil War person, and I like what they've done. Some of these kits, like that guy, he's metal, he's painted. I know I've painted a plastic version of that exact same soldier before. So I can't remember if that's maybe Conte. But, yes, some of these soldiers have kind of been re-released as plastic kits, but not many. I wish there were more. I wish some of these soldiers came as an unpainted kit that I could paint myself. But yeah, they're selling them as nice professionally painted collectibles. I love the expressions on their faces too, and the guns. The guns look so good. I don't even know how they get all that detail in them. And of course, if you are a figure painter, you know that a lot of stuff, you're using washes, you're using dry brushing. It's almost like a magician using his tricks. There's ways to get some really good detail into a figure without really, there's tricks to it, and that's a lot of fun. What a great scene. There's just some great scenes here. Love those musicians. Man, do they look great. And like I said earlier, the history store in Chillicothe, such a historic city. It's a really, really nice fit. Very appropriate. It's just a ton of history here in town. I mentioned that I am a Civil War person. I read a lot of books on the Civil War. I enjoy going to the battlefields. In fact, on this YouTube channel, I have various battlefield tours put up. And I think there's something fun about visiting a battlefield, reading up on a General Lee or a Jeb Stuart, a Forrest, Grant, Sherman, etc., etc. I think it's fun reading up on those personalities, and then finding a nice soldier, a nice kit, or just a version of that soldier to paint up. I think that's kind of fun. And by the way, check out that Frederick Douglass. Man, does he look great. Of course, Lincoln there too. He looks great too. A hard figure to paint. I've tried to paint Lincoln several times. Hard to get him just right. Might have been Clara Barton back there. Again, I wish they had some of these unpainted kits, because those would be fun to tackle. Love those guys playing cards there. Look how great they look. Anyway, yeah, if you collect soldiers, I'd love to hear from you. I'd like to know how you collect, what you collect. If you collect World War II, how does the figure collecting relate to the way you enjoy history? I would just love to hear from some more figure painters, figure collectors. And especially if you're in Chillicothe, what a great resource to have if you are in Chillicothe. Just really like this place, like what they're doing. Talked to a very friendly guy while I was here, looking at figures, and I'm sure I'll be back here frequently.